They say love looks at success, at status, at what you can provide. But real love looks at you, before the money, before the title, before the noise of the world telling you what you're worth. She didn't fall in love with my bank balance. She fell in love with my silence, my struggles, my becoming, with the man who had dreams in his eyes and hope in his hands, even when those hands were empty. This is not a story about wealth. It's a story about being seen, chosen, loved for who I am, not what I own. And that kind of love is the richest thing I'll ever have. She loved me when my pockets were light, but my heart was heavy with dreams. When there was more uncertainty than certainty, more questions than answers. She didn't ask me what I had. She asked me who I was becoming. That alone told me everything. Because love like that doesn't come searching for proof. It arrives with trust already in its hands. There were days when the world measured me in numbers I didn't yet have, days when silence was louder than applause, days when effort didn't immediately turn into results. And through all of it, she stayed. Not because she was waiting for a reward, not because she was calculating a future payout, but because she believed in the man standing in front of her, even when he was still under construction. She saw the late nights, the quiet frustrations, the moments when I stared at the ceiling, wondering if faith alone was enough. She didn't romanticize the struggle. She respected it. She sat beside it. She understood that ambition doesn't always come dressed in success. Sometimes it comes tired. Sometimes it comes unsure. Sometimes it comes with empty hands and a full heart. When I had nothing to offer but honesty, she accepted it. When all I could give was effort, she valued it. When my words were bigger than my reality, she listened anyway. That's how I knew. Because people who love money ask when. People who love status ask how soon. But someone who loves you asks how you feel. She never rushed me, never compared me, never made me feel small for growing at my own pace. She understood that a man's worth is not a snapshot, it's a journey. And she chose to walk with me, not ahead of me, not behind me, but beside me. There's a kind of love that waits at the finish line. And there's a kind of love that helps you reach it. She was never impressed by the idea of wealth. She was impressed by consistency, by integrity, by the way I kept showing up even when no one was watching. She fell in love with my discipline, with my patience, with the quiet way I refused to quit. I remember moments when I felt embarrassed by what I couldn't give, when I wanted to apologize for not being there yet. She never let me. She reminded me that yet is not failure. It's just time still doing its work. She believed in time. She believed in growth. She believed in me. She loved me when success was just a plan written in my head, when my confidence wavered but my values didn't. She loved me when all I could promise was effort and direction, and she never once tried to turn love into a transaction. That kind of love doesn't ask for receipts. It doesn't check balances. It checks intentions. It checks character. It checks how you treat people when you gain nothing in return. She watched how I spoke when I was frustrated, how I acted when I was disappointed, how I stayed honest even when shortcuts were tempting. She loved the man who kept choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. The man who didn't blame the world. The man who took responsibility even when it hurt. The man who believed that success without love is empty, but love without money is still rich. There were simple moments that meant more than any luxury ever could. Shared meals, quiet conversations, laughter that didn't cost anything, support that didn't come with conditions. In those moments, I understood that abundance isn't about having more. It's about needing less. She didn't see me as potential income. She saw me as a person, a human being with flaws, fears, and fire inside him. She didn't try to mold me into someone impressive. She accepted me as someone real, and that acceptance gave me the strength to become better without losing myself. Money changes people, attention changes people, but love like hers changes a man in a different way. It grounds him, it sharpens him, it reminds him why he started. It gives meaning to effort, direction to ambition, calm to chaos. When success finally started knocking, she didn't suddenly appear more interested. She was already there. When opportunities came, she didn't change. She stayed the same woman who believed when belief was the only currency available. She taught me that love isn't about what you gain from someone, it's about what you protect in them. She protected my dignity when I felt insecure. She protected my dreams when doubt crept in. She protected my heart when the world was careless with it. I never felt like I had to perform for her. Never felt like I had to exaggerate my worth. I could be quiet, I could be tired, I could be uncertain, and still be enough. That's not weakness, that's safety. And safety is rare. She didn't fall in love with the idea of success. She fell in love with the discipline behind it. the patience, the resilience, the way I kept going even when progress was invisible. She understood that money is a result, not an identity. And because she loved me before the money, I know she would love me without it too. That knowledge is priceless. It removes fear, it removes pressure, it allows a man to build without panic, to grow without losing himself. I've seen what happens when love is tied to lifestyle. It fades when circumstances change. But this love, it's rooted deeper. It's anchored in values, in mutual respect, in shared silence and unspoken understanding. She never asked me to prove my worth with numbers. She saw it in my actions, in my consistency, in my honesty, in the way I treated her when I had nothing to gain. She knew that character doesn't inflate with income. It reveals itself over time, and that's why I trust this love. Because it was attracted to shine, it was attracted to substance, it didn't come chasing rewards, it came offering partnership, it didn't demand security, it offered belief. She loved me when loving me required patience, when it required faith, when it required seeing beyond the present moment into a future that wasn't guaranteed yet. And loving someone like that is not naive, it's brave. There's strength in choosing a person before the world agrees with their value. There's courage in standing beside someone while they're still becoming. And she did that without asking for applause, without seeking validation, without ever making me feel like a project. She never loved my money, because there was no money to love. She loved my mind, my heart, my intention, my direction. She loved the man who woke up every day trying to be better than yesterday. And even now, as things change, as life moves, as growth happens, that foundation remains. Because it was never built on something temporary. It was built on who I am when everything else is stripped away. That's how I know this love is real. Not because of what it celebrates, but because of what it survived. Not because of what it gained, but because of what it never needed. She loved me when loving me meant trusting the unseen, believing in the unfinished, standing in the uncertainty without guarantees. And that kind of love doesn't disappear when circumstances shift. It adapts, it grows, it stays. She chose me, not my future earnings, not my potential lifestyle, me. And being chosen like that teaches a man how to love back with the same purity, the same loyalty, the same depth. Because when someone loves you without conditions, you don't want to betray that love with ego. You want to honor it with effort, with integrity, with becoming the best version of yourself, not for applause, but for the person who believed when belief was risky. She didn't invest in me for returns. She invested in me because she cared, and that care became fuel, quiet fuel, the kind that burns steady, not loud, the kind that lasts. That's the kind of love that doesn't need to announce itself. It's felt in the calm, in the consistency, in the way two people move through uncertainty together without turning on each other. She loved me when I was just a man with dreams, discipline, and doubt walking side by side, when my future was still forming, when my hands were still empty but my heart was already full, when the world hadn't yet decided what to call me, when all I could offer was truth, effort, and a promise to keep moving forward, to keep choosing growth over comfort, honesty over shortcuts, love over fear. And every single day waking up determined to be worthy of a love that never asked me to be rich, only real. She didn't fall in love with the life I could give her. She fell in love with the life I was willing to live honestly, with the way I showed up when no one was watching, with the way I stayed true even when being true was inconvenient. She didn't ask for luxury, she asked for presence. And presence, when it's real, costs more than money ever will. There's a quiet difference between being wanted and being chosen. Wanted is loud, wanted is flashy, wanted asks what you have today. Chosen is silent, chosen looks at who you are when you have nothing to prove. She chose me when choosing me didn't impress anyone, when it didn't come with comfort or certainty, when it only came with faith. She saw my flaws early. I never hid them well. The hesitation, the overthinking, the moments when confidence slipped and doubt took the wheel. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't walk away either. She understood that flaws aren't warnings. They're invitations to understand someone deeper. She loved me in the middle of becoming. Not at the end, not after the transformation. In the middle, when progress was slow and patience was tested, when success was still theoretical, when my hands were busy building something no one else could see yet. There were times I questioned myself, times I wondered if belief was enough to carry me forward, and in those moments, she didn't preach, she didn't pressure, she simply stayed. And sometimes someone staying is the loudest form of encouragement there is. She didn't admire ambition for how it looked, she respected it for how it felt. heavy, demanding, lonely. She understood that dreams require sacrifice long before they offer rewards. She never complained about the cost, she shared it. I never felt like I was auditioning for her love. There was no performance, no exaggeration, no need to pretend I had it all figured out. I could be uncertain and still be respected. I could be tired and still be valued. That kind of acceptance doesn't make you weaker, it makes you steadier. She didn't love me for what I could buy. She loved me for what I wouldn't sell. My principles, my honesty, my refusal to become someone I wouldn't recognize just to move faster. She trusted my compass even when the road was unclear. Money has a way of amplifying truth, but so does having none. When there's nothing to gain, intentions become clear, and she stayed when there was nothing to gain. That's not coincidence, that's character. She watched how I handled frustration, how I treated people who couldn't do anything for me, how I spoke about those who doubted me. She paid attention to the details most people overlook. Because love that's real doesn't rush. It observes. I didn't need to convince her of my worth. She wasn't waiting for proof. She saw it in my consistency, in my discipline, in the way I kept promises even when no one would have noticed if I didn't. She valued the invisible work. There were moments I felt behind, moments when comparison crept in quietly. She never compared me to anyone else. She reminded me that timing isn't a competition, that growth isn't linear, that becoming yourself takes exactly as long as it needs to. She believed in progress without demanding speed. She understood that rushing a man can break him, supporting him can build him, and she chose support every time. When people talk about love, they often talk about chemistry, about sparks, about excitement, but what she gave me was something steadier, something calmer, something that didn't fade when circumstances shifted. She gave me peace, and peace is rare. She didn't love the idea of who I might become someday. She loved the reality of who I was choosing to be every day. That choice mattered more to her than outcomes. Effort mattered more than results. I never felt reduced to my earning potential, never felt measured by milestones. She saw my humanity before my productivity, my values before my value, and that perspective changes how a man sees himself. She taught me that love isn't about being impressive, it's about being intentional, about showing up even when it's uncomfortable, about staying honest even when it would be easier to impress. When the world was loud with opinions, she was quiet with understanding. When others asked what I had achieved, she asked what I had learned. When others focused on results, she focused on growth. She didn't pressure me to arrive, she trusted that I would. And that trust made the journey lighter, not easier, lighter. There's a difference between someone believing in your success and someone believing in you. Success is conditional. You is not. She believed in me even when success was still a question mark. I've seen how quickly attention changes when money enters the room, how voices soften, how smiles widen. But she never changed. She was the same before, during, and after. That consistency told me everything I needed to know. She didn't fall in love with a future version of me and tolerate the present one. She loved the present one and trusted the future would take care of itself. That trust wasn't blind. It was rooted in knowing my values. She understood that money can solve problems, but it can't create meaning. Meaning comes from alignment, from living in a way that doesn't betray who you are. She loved that I cared about that. I never had to explain why I chose patience over shortcuts, why I chose integrity over speed. She already understood, because she was built the same way. She didn't love loudly, she loved deeply, in small gestures, in consistency, in staying, in listening, in not needing to be convinced. There were days I felt like I was carrying the weight of expectation, and she never added to it. She made it easier to carry by reminding me that my worth wasn't on trial. She never loved me conditionally, never held affection hostage to outcomes, never made me feel like love was something I had to earn with success. Love was the starting point, not the reward. That kind of love changes how you move through the world. It removes desperation. It removes fear. It allows you to build with clarity instead of panic. She didn't want a provider at any cost. She wanted a partner with principles. Someone who would still stand tall if everything was stripped away. Someone who knew who he was without applause. I didn't feel like I had to become someone else to be loved. I could become more of myself. And that's the difference. She loved the man who kept his word, who showed up on time, who took responsibility for his mistakes, who didn't blame the world when things went wrong. She loved the quiet strength in that there's a safety in being loved for your essence, a freedom in knowing that Even if plans change, circumstances shift, or outcomes disappoint, the connection remains. She didn't love my money. She loved my direction, my intention, my refusal to quit on myself, my willingness to grow even when growth was uncomfortable. She saw value where others saw delay. She saw depth where others saw lack. She saw promise without needing guarantees. I never had to sell her a dream. I just had to live honestly. And that was enough. She didn't need luxury to feel secure. She needed truth, consistency, respect. She needed to know that the man beside her wouldn't disappear when things got hard, and I didn't. Because love like hers teaches you how to stay. She didn't love me because I was winning. She loved me while I was learning how to win without losing myself. That's the kind of love that doesn't fade when circumstances shift, because it was never built on circumstances to begin with. She loved me before the world agreed with her, before results made sense, before success validated anything. And loving someone before proof exists is not weakness, it's vision. She had vision for who I was, not for what I could provide. She trusted my process, she trusted my pace, she trusted my heart. And that trust became something sacred, something steady, something real, something that doesn't need money to survive, applause to grow, or permission to exist. Something that stands quietly in a world that's always asking for more. Choosing instead to say, this is enough, this is real, this is worth staying for, this is love that sees the soul and stays with it. Love that doesn't ask for numbers but notices character. Love that doesn't chase outcomes but commits to the person. Love that rests in truth and grows in patience. Love that believes without demanding proof. Love that holds space for becoming without rushing arrival. Love that remains constant while everything else changes. Love that chooses the man and never mistakes his worth for his wallet.